Hello everyone and welcome to Race Day on Cressy Sports. The Formula E season continues with round 5 in Hong Kong. The race looks set to have a party atmosphere this weekend as Electric Racing celebrates its 50th E-Prix against the backdrop of the bustling Central Harbour front. Joining me in studio to build up to this historic race is none other than the legend Sasha Martinengo. Sasha, always great to see you.
Hugo, you too. I'm genuinely so excited for the beginning of this race. I think we're in for a cracking event.
Now, it's been an exciting season so far.
It has. It's been incredible. You know, 4 different winners in the first 4 races, and I think that's the wonderful thing of Formula E. It's rather unpredictable.
Okay, well, a big thank you to the US Polo Association for these lovely shirts. And you can follow them at US Polo ASSNZA. Okay, for more details. Now, Sasha, your love for motorsport is in Formula One. You have now watched several Formula E races. What do you make for Formula E and the style of racing?
I think, you know, anybody who goes into open wheel racing, something like Formula E, is always going to be up against something like Formula One. But this is a really progressive series that we have, and I think they're really doing things in a very logical step to ensure that everything is standardized, that the cars are all the same, the engines are the same, the output is all of the same. Because from there you're going to generate people to come and watch, to sit and say, hey, you're not just going to have one driver winning every single race. So I think they really are doing well. And congratulations, their 50th race already. A lot of people wouldn't have thought they would have got this far.
No, definitely not. Now, a few minutes ago, off air, we saw Sam Bird, and he was going through an arduous training regime. You'd obviously think, well, the average fan would think that, you know, you sitting behind a car, do you really have to be fit? Yeah,
you know, motorsport, so many people just sit there and think, oh, get me in a car and I'll show you what to do. The G-forces, even in Formula E, that these guys are pulling, going into corners, the amount of strain that it puts onto the neck is incredible. And of course, the mental challenge, you know, they say healthy body, healthy mind. You've got to be supremely fit when it comes to the world of motorsport.
So and it's not just take us a little bit through G-force and what it means, that the impact that it has on the driver.
Okay, so when you're driving at speed and you go through a corner or even under braking, you're reducing that speed in such a short period of time that the forces on the body are pushed, you know, are pushed through the vehicle into yourself. So all of a sudden, your body is taking a tremendous amount of strain. Same as going through high-speed corners. The amount of G-force, which is the gravitational force, which is pushing onto you, is extreme. And you've got to be supremely fit to be a motorsport racer.
Now, you talk about the vehicle, which you spoke about earlier on, and obviously there's always going to be a comparison to Formula E. Now, the one thing we picked up is that there is no power steering.
Yeah, I think in most motorsport categories, a lot of the drivers would prefer to drive without power steering or a very limited amount of power steering. You want to try and feel the car as much as possible. But that also puts a tremendous amount of stress onto your body and especially your arms, you know, having to turn these corners very vigorously. And in street circuits like Formula E, you know, a lot of hairpin bends. So, I mean, there's a lot of energy that you're putting through your body.
Now, obviously, a lot of these, in fact, all the races are on street circuits. So what does that do to the actual racing?
Well, you know, there's a couple of things that you've got to look at. Street racing is notoriously difficult to overtake. We've seen it all over the world. The circuits are much narrower. There's no runoff areas. You just, you know, if you make a mistake, you're usually going to hit into a wall. So,
another car.
or into another car. So it's been quite amazing to watch. There are a couple of things that have concerned me with Formula E. There's a lot of crashing. And unnecessary crashing in Formula E. But in the other side of the coin, you can't really blame the drivers for trying to find that gap because it is so difficult to overtake on street circuits. But we do have something, a new innovation in Formula E.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, and that is something called the attack mode. We've had the fan zone, we'll talk about that in a short while, but they've introduced something called the attack mode. And I mean, we are 35 minutes away from the start of the race. So only 25 minutes ago, were all of the teams instructed where this attack mode is on the circuit, and now the teams have to try and strategize it. And just to explain what the attack mode is. So a Formula E car's got 200 kilowatts of power. Attack mode gives the drivers an extra 25 kilowatts of power. Okay, but it's in a demarcated area of the circuit where they can activate. It's an activation zone.
How significant is an extra 25 kilos?
It's massive. I mean, it's honestly, it's like, just going past another cars, though they're standing still at these kind of speeds.
Yeah.
So what they've allocated on every one of the circuits is where this activation zone is. Then a driver is entitled, they have to drive off the racing line. Okay, so which also makes it dusty, slippery. But they do have the extra advantage of 25 kilowatts. So they drive off the racing line into this activation zone, trigger this power, and they do have it for several laps that they can use this power. But of course, that also drains the battery energy. So you've got to be very careful and very clever as to when you want to use this attack mode. It could be to extend a lead. It could be to try and overtake somebody. So it's very strategic, and you've got to be careful not to use it too early, because you might have a safety car or a full course yellow where all of a sudden the field bunches up again.
And before we take a look at the calendar very quickly, now how much of that strategy is all up to the driver? Is it all a team effort as to when you use it?
It's got to be the whole team who sits there and works up. But they've got to look at various scenarios. On these street circuits, when is a double yellow going to happen, where the whole course slows down, how they're going to use it, and if you've got a gap and there's only 15 minutes left, maybe that's when you use it. So they'll look at about 3 or 4 different scenarios.
Okay, so 5 races in. Let's take a look at the calendar for season 5 and see who's come out tops and what we can expect for the remainder of the series. And it really is a World Series. Great, obviously, to see the likes of Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Morocco and Chile on the calendar, not countries normally associated with street or circuit racing.
Yeah, I think it's terrific. You've got to broaden motorsport. I mean, Switzerland's on the calendar as well. They haven't had racing there, I think, since the 1950s. So this is what's happened so far, and this is where we're going to: Italy, France, Monaco, as I mentioned, Switzerland, and then a double round in United States to end us off, which is great. Because it's street circuits, Hugo, you can't disrupt people's lives too much, so spending an extra day there, really disrupts the people. But it's great, we're already at round 5. There's only 12 rounds. So the championship is critical as well now.
Interesting, something we did see, though, is that there have been 4 different winners.
Yeah, which is great, and that's what you want in motorsport. We all have our favorite drivers, we all have our favorite teams, in no matter what category of or what formula you are watching. But when you have too much domination, sometimes you start getting a little bit antsy about it. So I mean, it's great, and we've got 4 different winners already. And looking at today, we could well have our 5th different winner in 5 different races. I think that's great for the sport.
Doesn't that speak to Formula E being a game of chance?
Well, I think
you would expect some consistency or some continuity.
Well, it comes down to the elements. We had qualifying early on today in very, very wet conditions. So it's those conditions where if you're out on the track at the right time, where it might not be as slippery, you might be able to maximize, as we saw Stoffel van Doorn do today. But I think each race must be run on its own merits, and because these cars are basically equal to each other, it comes down to the driver's ability. And as we saw in Mexico, it comes down to a bit of luck as well. The cars ran out of energy. I mean, it was spectacular to watch right at the end. Pascal Wehrlein going to get his first win. He's 20 meters away from the line and his car just died. Bang. And De Grassi came and snapped it from him. So I think, there's some good elements there.
Well, only 4 races into the 13 race series in season 5, and it's very tight. And as we can see from current driver standings, now caliber of drivers is improving, obviously making for very, very exciting races.
Very much so. And, as I said, I don't want to be critical of it, but there are some unnecessary crashes. But you also have to look at it and say these guys are racing on street circuits. They're trying to make gaps as easy as possible. But looking at that, our top four drivers there, all, or 3 out of the 4 have actually driven in Formula 1 races. Sam Bird was a test driver for Mercedes, but never raced in Formula 1. Pascal Wehrlein, Formula 1. Lotterer, Frins, Verne, Mortaro, all ex-Formula 1 drivers or test drivers. So, the caliber of drivers in Formula E is right up there. There's nothing you can stop on that.
You'd have to suggest that the only similarity in terms of driving between Formula 1 and Formula E is obviously the speed, because you'd assume that guys that have raced in Formula One and have been proficient in there would come and conquer, but that's not the case.
Yeah, so, it's incredible. In open wheel racing, you get some drivers who are brilliant in Formula 2, and then they get to Formula 1 and they don't really cope. And you get guys who are in Formula 3 and jump up to Formula 1 and become superstars. There's a significant difference, Hugo, between Formula E and Formula 1. Let's make the distinction is huge. But these are open wheel specialists. They know about racing, and they should be good enough no matter what you put them in. If it's a electric driven car, if it's an Indy car, if it's a Formula 1 car, Formula 2 or whatever, these guys have got the skills. It's a question of just now tailoring it, getting the setup of the car that suits their driving style.
Now, the one thing that's pretty exciting about today's race is the rain. There has been rain falling in Hong Kong.
There has been rain falling. I'm just looking at the pictures now. It seems relatively dry. We watched a little bit earlier with the Jaguar I-Pace race, and that was in very slippery conditions, but they seem to have dried out the track quite a lot. I was hoping just for a little bit of wet patches around, just from a spectator point of view. But all of the drivers will be happy that the conditions remain consistent for the whole time. I think what's also great about Formula E, they run a Michelin all-weather tire. So whether it's raining or whether it's dry, they're going to run on exactly the same rubber. But this will hurt those guys who missed out in qualifying, that's for sure.
So obviously that impacts strategy then, because it levels out the playing field, doesn't it?
Very much so. And I think what's very important here is if we look at what our top 6 drivers over here, we've got 2 guys who are very much in the points at the moment, and that is Eduardo Mortara and Lucas de Grassi. All of the main guys behind, the Felix da Costas of the world, the Pascal Wehrleins of the world, Ambrosio, Sam Bird, are all in contention for the championship. This is a great moment for Lucas de Grassi and Eduardo Mortara to catch up, because all of the other drivers are going to have to really fight for position, be much more aggressive. And guys like Mortara and de Grassi, if they're clever enough, and clever is a wild word in motor racing, because everyone thinks about it and then the visor goes down and the red mist comes and everyone just goes to hell for leather. But Mortara and de Grassi have a great chance today to move up in the championship standings. They shouldn't be thinking about a win, to be honest. They should be sitting and making sure the likes of Felix da Costa, Ambrosio, Jean-Eric Vergne are all behind them when it comes to the points at the end of the day.
Now, it's not just the drivers, but the teams are also very tightly packed on the standings after 4 rounds. Now, is this an indication on the type of racing we're experiencing? Same batteries and design, and not much separating the teams, but the driver's ability. We've obviously talked about the standard Michelin tyres.
Yeah, very much so. And this is a team sport, and people must always remember that. So when you've got 2 competent drivers, you want both your drivers to finish at the end of the race, and hopefully both of them getting the points. And as you can see, it's very tight at the top. And what's also great, you've got Mahindra in there, you've got Nissan, you've got BMW, you've got Audi. And in 2020, it looks like, Mercedes are going to be there, Porsche is going to be there as well. So a growing motorsport, and something people who are a little bit skeptical about it need to start embracing this and understanding. And as I said in the beginning, get the mindset around the fact that they don't make the screaming noise of other cars. No. But the racing is really, really good.
Interesting enough, Mahindra currently sit atop those standings, and they're not the largest motor brand, so to speak. What does that tell us about Formula E, and obviously what they're doing right as Mahindra?
Well, I think what is great about it and mentioned is that it's standardized. So the engines, or what do you call them? The motors are all exactly the same. The batteries are the same. The weights are all of the same. So now it's just a question of maximizing the potential of your 2 racing drivers. Sitting in there and saying, guys, yes, we want one of you to win the championship, but the team championship is just as important. Never forget that.
Now, there are 2 racing drivers per team. Right, so what is the sort of synergy between the drivers? Are they trying to outdo each other? Is it like Formula 1, no, Sash is going to win, you just there to support him?
No, listen, in motor racing, most Formula always have 2 drivers or whatever. The person you hate the most is your teammate. End of story. That's the person you could be all friends and we'll take the promo pictures together, Hugo, but when it comes to racing, I have to beat you, you have to beat me, because we're both fighting for our careers. You know, don't forget, yes, you might play second fiddle as the season progresses, where they might implement team orders and say, listen, Hugo's leading by 25 points. We've got 3 races to go. Sasha, you need to go out there, defend, and let Hugo go. You shouldn't say you play for the team. But in terms of real racing, the first person you have to beat is your teammate, because if you don't beat your
team... So the word team is actually a guise in all of this.
It can be a paradox. Yeah, but it is a team sport, and it is for the team. But when it comes to racing, you race against everybody. But the first person you really have to beat is your teammate, because if you don't, you're going to be out of a drive.
Excellent. Now, one of the things we'd like to talk about is, in this series, is the impact fans can have on a result. Now, you think this shows in the results. So, fan boost is absolutely key. We must also talk about the driver who's on pole and what fan boost can do for his race.
Yeah. So, in fan boost, 5 of the drivers who accumulate the most amount of social media acceptances have the opportunity for an extra 25 kilowatts. Now, when it first came out, I thought it's a great initiative. I find it a little bit artificial, I'll be honest, right now, and I think it will slowly phase out. I think attack mode is a much better idea.
Do you find it artificial because it's more about popularity of...
Yes, of a specific driver.
Yeah.
So, you know, if, for example, you know, you've got Stoffel Vandoorne, who's on pole position, and I believe he's got the most votes in...
At the moment, I think about 18% of
Yeah, and I mean, his profile, just from his days of Formula One, will be significantly higher than, you know, other guys who are further down the grid. But it has added tremendous excitement, and I think it's got a lot of people who are not really interested in motorsport who've sat there and went, hey, who's the Stoffel Vandoorne guy? He's quite cool. Okay, I'm going to give him a fan boost.
But I suppose the other factor to look at also is that... what about the home drivers? Do they get some advantage?
Well, one would hope so. You know, one would hope so. I mean, if you go into the various countries and you've got the drivers, you're going to hope for that as well. But only 5 of them get it. So during the course of the race, they can also implement their fan boost, which gives them that extra power as well. But don't forget, with extra power, you also have the unfortunate opportunity of draining your battery. So you've got to be very careful of when you use your fan boost or your attack mode.
So let's take a look at a number of factors that are in favour of Stoffel Vandoorne. So firstly, he's on pole.
Yeah.
Secondly, he's got fan boost, so that's an extra 25 kilowatts. Does this guarantee him, for want of a better word, a podium finish at the very least?
Well, you know, when it comes to street circuit racing, and we've seen it in Formula E, and we've seen it in a lot of other formula as well, pole position on a street circuit is of paramount. This circuit is extremely narrow. We've seen it in some of the racing that we watched during the course of this morning as well. So it's going to be very difficult to overtake, but the guys are going to lunge down. So if Stoffel Vandoorne gets the decent start, he can control the pace of the race from the front. All he has to do is basically drive in the middle of the track as fast or as slow as he wants to, without getting past, and he can control it. He's a very experienced racing driver. He needs a confidence boost as well. Things haven't gone well for him in the last couple of years. So Vandoorne will sit there and say he relished in those wet weather conditions, and I do believe he's got all of the potential to go out and win today.
Well, let's hope he does. Now, round 5 has made its way to the city of Hong Kong in China. The 10-turn, 1.86-kilometre circuit located in the central harbourfront area is a firm favourite on the Formula E calendar. Making use of existing roads, all 22 cars and drivers will rip past landmarks including International Finance Centre, Hong Kong Observation Wheel and City Hall. Now, back in the early days, the track was touted as a potential venue for the all-electric series inaugural race, but it wasn't until October 9, 2016 that the city hosted an E-Prix as its first major international motorsport event. Now, is this one of the big advantages of Formula E? They can design a circuit from the city streets. No race-specific circuit is required. Utilize what they have. 45-minute races plus 1 lap also plays nicely into the world of today.
Yeah, listen, I think the duration of the race is terrific. You know, people nowadays have got so many different things that keep them occupied. So 45 minutes is great. But, you know, to put on an event like this, it just says, oh, well, it's a street circuit. You don't have to have purpose-built tracks. And it takes such an incredible amount of logistics to sit there and set up the safety barriers, to cordon off areas so that you don't have people running onto circuits. It's a massive undertaking, and also to get the buy-in of the people of the city. So I think it's wonderful for Formula E, because people can now sit there and you know, if they might have apartments overlooking the circuit and just open their window and go, wow, and it's not making too much noise for their ears. So it's brilliant. It's a great concept, but it does lend itself to the fact that, unfortunately, the guys crash too much because it is so difficult to overtake.
Now, obviously, one of the aspects that we need to look at in the car is the suspension, and suspension has been made in such a way that it will adjust to the unevenness, if you will, of some of these street circuits.
Yeah, I mean, street circuits are notoriously bumpy. We all know that. We drive on these roads, the people drive on these roads all of the time. Also in Formula E, the suspensions are a lot sturdier than you have in other formulas. So the cars are very hard. We call it hard to drive, in the sense of, you know, they do bounce around a lot. There's quite a lot of vibration for the drivers as well. And they need to be, because these cars bump into each other. You don't want these suspensions breaking too easily. But we have seen it in the past. The guys have got to try and keep it clean. It's open wheel racing. As soon as wheels touch together, the chances of breakages are pretty high.
Now, this Gen 2 car that we are experiencing in this race today, can you tell us a little bit about it? What are some of the changes from last season's car?
Well, it's still, the whole car itself weighs 800 kilos. The battery itself is 200 kilos. It's a standardized, I suppose, want of a better word, engine supplied by Renault. But they do have a gearbox, which is strange enough. You don't really need a gearbox in an electric car, but these do have a gearbox just to channel the torque power to each of the cars. So it's a standardized five-speed gearbox. But I think the great improvements are, they've sat and said, listen, we want a one race, as opposed to, you know, the previous seasons you drive for 20 odd minutes, get out of a car, get into another car. And it was a little bit peculiar that way. This is an hour, 45-minute all-out sprint. However, you have to have the right strategy, so as long as you don't run out of battery power at the end. What's also quite amazing is don't forget the batteries come from Williams, which has been in Formula One forever, and McLaren are very automotive technology, are very involved in Formula E as well. So there are some great synergies across the formula.
So obviously a lot of stuff has been standardized, but we'll come back to that in a moment as we stand by for the green light in Hong Kong. More from my in-studio guest, Sasha Martinengo, as we build up to round 5 of the 2018-2019 Formula E Championship. But first, let's hear from Formula E journalist Saunders Carmichael Brown as he sums up the Season 5 for us in a nutshell.
If you're new to Formula E, let me tell you something. This is the race you want to watch. So starting off with the beast that our drivers will be behind the wheel of, the Gen 2 car. Now, a new and improved battery means that driver swaps are a thing of the past. The car will now complete the entire race distance, and don't even get me started on power. 200 kilowatts available in race mode, 225 in attack mode, we'll get onto that in a minute, and combine that with a fan boost and a maximum of 250 kilowatts at the driver's disposal. What does 250 kilowatts of power get you? It gets you 0 to 100 kph in 2.8 seconds and a top speed of 280 kilometers per hour. We need to keep our eyes open for halo lights as well, which will demonstrate which power mode is being used, blue for attack mode and magenta for fan boost. Season 5 will take us to some new cities, so as well as the UNESCO heritage site of Adiria for our season opener, Sanya in China and Bern in Switzerland have also been added to the calendar, along with a return to the streets of Monaco. An already top-class manufacturer lineup is joined by big players like BMW, Mercedes-affiliated HWA Racelab and Nissan, along with a collection of high-caliber drivers to add to what is arguably the highest quality grid in motorsport, surely. We also have a new race format of 45 minutes plus 1 lap, including the new attack mode element, which will allow drivers to increase the power output of their car twice a race. Take a look here to see how that works. Fan boost will also now be available to 5 drivers per race and can be activated 22 minutes into the race. When it comes to ones to watch, we've got the Season 4 champion Jon-Erik Vergne looking to become the first driver ever to hold on to the title. You've got team champions Audi Sport and their drivers Lucas di Grassi and Daniel Abt, along with the new teams and drivers all looking to make their mark. BMW's Antonio Felix da Costa and Alexander Sims looked rapid and topped the standings during testing in Valencia. Let's see what happens when you add seasons of experience with a highly improved car. That could really spice things up.
Brilliant, don't you just want to race? Now, playtime really is over, and Alejandro Agag has made a huge statement in the world of motorsport with this series. Seems to be no stopping the growth of the sport. 50th E-Prix, as mentioned earlier, you think they will make a dent in F1 popularity?
Well, I think, any person who loves a form of motorsport has got to embrace anything. You can't just sit there and go, oh, well, I only watch Formula One. I mean, I watch everything when it comes to motorsport. And I think also, if we just look at the progress of the world, how they're adopting electricity and electric vehicles. I think one of the manufacturers, Audi, has said that by 2021, 35% of all of their cars will be electric. So, I mean, this is very much part of the future. It doesn't mean it's going to take away from Formula One. Formula One is a completely different category to Formula E. But this is very important for the development of electric cars going forward, just as Formula One is for petrol-going cars. So as technology improves and battery life improves and battery weights come down, that's all going to transfer into the cars that you and I will buy in the future.
So this type of race, I mean, it's only 45 minutes. Right? What is it doing to the fans out there that maybe sort of sat on the fence as far as Formula One or motorsport in general is concerned?
Well, 45 minutes is still quite a long time when you think about a race. Most of us, you know, like me, we used to 2 hours of racing of Formula One, but that's been, you know, around since the 1950s. This is, I think, appealing to people who don't have that much of a concentration span and just sit there and say, okay, here's a Formula E race. It's going to be nice and quick. Let's get it over with. It should be fun. And thereafter can get on with their whole day. I think they've done a very good job in learning to walk first as opposed to just going out running. And that's why Formula E is progressing and is already into its 5th season. Many other formulas, open wheel, have tried to come into that open wheel space of Formula One and have failed because they've tried to take on Formula One head on. You're not going to do it. No one is going to do it. Go this way and look how it's progressing. It's doing really, really well.
Now, you talked a little bit about fan boost, and clearly not a huge fan of it. But do you think that it's a great strategy to involve the fans? Because we are going digital across the world, and especially for the younger generation.
Engagement is critical in anything that one does now at the moment. And Formula E sat there and embraced it and sat and said, hey, what about this as an idea? And they managed to get it working. As I say, I'm not a particular fan of it, but it does get a huge amount of traction onto their various social media platforms. And from there, people then engage. So very clever marketing.
I guess it is. Now, over the last few days, some big news has come out in the world of Formula E. Okay, first up, Bernie Ecclestone. According to Alejandro Agag, Bernie Ecclestone told me, "You will never make your first race." Now, was this a statement to, obviously because he thought he was competing head-on with Formula One, or was he being objective?
I think, you know, when Ecclestone made that comment, don't forget he was still in charge of Formula One. I think it was just a question of posturing. Ecclestone always tries to get under everybody else's skin. But I think Bernie Ecclestone would be the first to sit there and applaud Alejandro Agag for what he's done and what he's actually created. And 50th race already, so well done.
Well, off the cuff, he has sent him a message to say congratulations on your 50th.
Oh, there we go. So it just shows you. And it goes back to the fact that sat and went, let's walk first before we can run. And I think it's working very, very well.
Now, things are getting very exciting. Mercedes unveils a Formula E concept livery ahead of the 2019-20 season.
Yeah, it looks stunning.
How big an endorsement is this on Formula E?
It is huge. And I mean, they are already there in a minor capacity Mercedes, but they will be there in 2020. And it looks like Porsche is going to be there as well. And from there, I think we're going to see it really explode. They're going to have to be careful as the regulators, because if you start now allowing the various teams to adopt different batteries or different technologies, you might end up with total domination. So I think they've got to be very strategic going forward as to how Formula E progresses.
So you're against domination of any sort?
Well, especially in this kind of category. We see it in Formula One, but Formula One is a pinnacle of motorsport and absolute technology. Here you've got the chance for everybody to use the same kind of technology. So Williams is supplying a battery in Formula E at the moment. You know, who knows, in 2 years' time, it might be Sony, it might be Samsung, it might be Huawei, it might be something completely different. But standardize it across so that everybody learns from that technology.
But isn't this the thing that's impacted on the absence of one consistent winner, that everything is so standard and very, very limited potentially to driver ability and team strategy?
Well, I think it is down to driver ability at this stage and the setup of the car. You know, all of these circuits are different. People have different driving styles, so you have to try and adapt as much as possible. But, you know, going back to if you have things that are standardized in something like Formula E, I mean, what happens if another manufacturer or company comes out tomorrow and says, listen, your current battery is 200 kilograms. I can give you the same power for 100 kilograms, but we're only going to supply Hugo's team. Now all of a sudden they've got 100 kilograms that they can play with for the rest of their car, which is going to give them a significant advantage. That might come, and I assume it will come in the future of Formula E. But I think they must be very careful of what road they go down, because if you've got a Mercedes coming up against a small Chinese brand, who's going to win? The one with the most money.
Suppose you're right. Now, Formula E to return to London in 2020 with the world's first indoor-outdoor track. So obviously, the biggest of fan boosts for Formula E with this happening.
Yeah, I think that's going to be incredible. I assume it's going to be at the O2 Dome or Arena or somewhere around there. And I mean, the weather's always so unpredictable in England. Great that they've got the all-weather tyres. So, you know, it doesn't matter if they're indoor and it's dry and it's outdoor and it's wet. But it should make for something spectacular, and that's what you want. You want to see something exciting.
So it's obviously something brand new because we haven't experienced it. But what is your take on the indoor and outdoor racing, all in a single race?
Yeah, I think it would be great. You know, it just means that you're going to have your wits about you if you are going from dry conditions and maybe very cool conditions into wet conditions. That could play a major factor. In Monaco, don't forget, they go through the tunnel, and if it's raining, all of a sudden, you know, for 5 or 8 seconds, they've got dry weather conditions. So it's adaptability of the racing drivers.
You're absolutely right, and we do know all about London weather. 1 minute it's raining, next minute it's not.
Yeah, no, that's for sure. So I think it's another great initiative. Embrace it.
Now let's take a look at this race today, and your take on the drivers. Who do you reckon, outside obviously of the guy who's in pole, Van Doorn?
Well, sorry, Hugo, but I mean, if you look at it, the championship leader, Jerome D'Ambrosio, is starting at the back of the field. He's got it all to play for. And as I mentioned a little bit earlier, Van Doorn, yes, wants to get the win. But the guys to watch are De Grassi and Mortara. They are in this championship fight. They need to go out there and score as many points as possible in order to get closer to the likes of Jerome D'Ambrosio. For guys like D'Ambrosio and most of the top 5 drivers in the championship are right at the back of the field. They'll be wanting to just get points. That's the most important thing. It's only 12 races long to accumulate points. I'm just looking at some pictures. I don't think there's any rain at the moment, but I think it is still going to be very, very slippery out there. So Van Doorn to me for the win if he gets off the line properly. But watch out for Mortara and De Grassi to just maximize their positions.
Yeah, okay. So we are going to take a look at some interviews that have been going on this entire morning.
Sam Bird, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. You?
Yeah, I'm really good. It's a celebration, this, isn't it? It's the 50th E-Prix, you know, and we're in a city which really typifies what Formula E is all about, especially this circuit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the 50th race, and it could be the most exciting one yet with these sort of damp, drying conditions. Nobody knows what to do. Completely mixed bag on setups, on tyre pressures. It's going to be crazy.
Now, you're a driver that's always ever so aggressive. That's going to be difficult on this track, Sam?
No, we'll be aggressive, mate. There you
go. That's why we like him. He's a blooming good golfer as well, Sam Bird. We've not had a game for a while, my friend. Let's see if we can chat to, I think, Sebastian. Sebastian, are you sitting down? Quick chat. Okay, only 30 seconds. Thank you very much. One of the pioneers of Formula E, let's say that. Nissan done exceptionally well this season. How are you feeling for this race?
Yeah, we're looking good. We're doing well in quali, but never really in the race. So hopefully that's going to be the day where we can really score quite a few points. But it's going to be the first ever wet race, so let's see. Allegedly.
Have you heard that it's going to rain?
I don't know, but I thought it would not rain anymore since 7, and it came back many times. So. We'll see. All
right, thank you very much. There you go, Sebastian Buemi. Let's see who else we can find, because everyone... Oh, here we go. Follow me. Let's see if we can quickly chat. Hey, Felipe, just a quick chat, please. How are you feeling?
I'm good. I mean, ready to the race, to the start. So I really hope we can have a good race. Condition is not easy, tricky. Let's try. The race will be long, not easy, so try everything I can.
In conditions like this, there's obviously a lot to think about when it comes to energy in the car, the fact that it's really slippy as well. How do you maintain your focus during, 45 minutes in a lap?
Well, I mean, first of all, understanding the track changes. The track will be changing all the time, getting drier, you know, in case it's not raining anymore. So understanding the car, the pressure, the brakes, I mean, the traffic, everything, you know, around. So, I mean, so much to think about. I really hope I get everything right.
There you go. All the best. Thank you very much, Felipe Massa.
Now, something that you won't get in Formula One is the approachability of these drivers on the grid, and the reporter can walk up to them and ask them questions, and they're pretty happy to do that. Is it a marketing gimmick? Is it more about the absence of pressure compared to Formula One?
I suppose, it's a double-edged sword. A racing driver gets very, very focused, wants to actually just go and do their race. And sometimes it means, an hour before they don't want to be interrupted. And I understand. They want to
be in that zone.
They want to be in a zone. But they are also gladiators to the public. And the public has every right to, find out a little bit more about them. Formula E embraces it. The Americans are very good at getting their drivers out there. And Formula One is adopting it, which is really, really good. And with the Americans that have bought over Formula One, they've now said to the drivers, sorry, but you are obligated to talk to interviewers and show out there that the fans actually know who you are. So I think it's very, very good for the sport. But one also must always respect these drivers and their precious time.
Now, in that interview, Sebastian Wemy said that this would be the first race, wet race, actually. So a little bit of the unknown for most drivers.
Completely. We had a wet qualifying as well, so the conditions were very wet in qualifying. So at least the drivers have had an understanding of how the car reacts in those conditions. We have seen some rain after the I-Pace Jaguar race, so the track is damp, but it will evolve. On the racing line, it will get drier and drier unless the rain comes down again. But this is going to make attack mode very interesting, because attack mode is off the racing line. So you might get your extra 25 kilowatts of power off the racing line, but you might have tremendous wheel spin because the track is so wet, and now all of a sudden you've got to get heat back into the tyres to get them up to working temperature. So it'll be interesting to see who uses attack mode and when they use it.
So I suppose there's obviously a lot of communication between the driver and his team.
100%. The driver needs to know where they are on the track relative to other drivers that they can't see. And, the team could sit there and say, listen, here's an opportunity for you to make up 2 or 3 seconds in the next 2 laps. Use your attack mode and go for it and keep it nice and clean. So they'll be talking to each other all of the time. It's going to be a very hairy race. I hope not too many incidents.
Yeah. Now, while we're speaking about comms, earlier picked up that with over 350 skyscrapers sitting on Hong Kong's shoreline, it's home to the greatest number of super towers, right? Now, what that makes for impressive reading, it was claimed that several drivers encountered radio communication problems due to the buildings blocking the signal. How much of an impact do you reckon it will have today?
Yeah, I think what happens, unfortunately, with radio waves, they'll be talking to each other while they're going around the circuit, and especially in the free practice sessions, they will sit and say, for example, as we look at a graphic, they'll be saying, I'm at turn 6, I'm now at turn 7, can you hear me? And make sure that their comms are right. And if they have an issue, for example, at turn 9, they'll talk to each other and say, listen, you can see on the circuit where I am, don't talk to me at that time of when I'm in that area, because the circuit is, there's a breakup in communications. It's just a natural form of communication and the problem of radio waves.
Well, it is race number 5 of the season and the 50th of E-Prix calendar. Let's race.
Is Andre Lotterer, the German, driving for the DS Techeetah team, and in 4th place, another Brit, Gary Paffett.
Double DTM champion Gary needs a good result. It's been a tough baptism, but he was the first driver to figure out the tricky conditions here in Hong Kong this